Good evening. Thank you for joining today's webinar. My name's Ian McFarland and I'm one of the Sheep Connect SA team. Tonight's webinar doesn't happen without the support of Australian Wool Innovation and the South Australian Sheep Industry Fund for Sheep Connect. If you'd like to find out more information on Sheep Connect, just visit our website or follow us on Twitter. Today's webinar has been recorded, and so the recording will be available on the Sheep Connect SA YouTube channel towards the end of the week. So you can visit that and review it if you like. So today's presenter is Will Wilson. Will has over 30 years experience in the financial services sector in Australia and overseas. And for the past 3 years, he's overseen the development and management of the WoolQ online platform.
Well, thank you very much, Ian, and thank you, Jody, and thank you, listeners, after a hard day at work to listen to this presentation. It's probably a lot to ask, but I'm very grateful for your interest and grateful for the interest of Sheep Connect South Australia. Look, tonight I'm going to let you know a bit more about WoolQ, the Wool Exchange portal. I'm not sure how much you know, so I will start off as though you don't know very much, and certainly at the end would be very keen to hear your questions. So, you know, make sure you make notes along the way of things you'd like me to make clearer. But just by way of background, you know, what is WoolQ? Well, we've referred to it as an innovative new resource for the Australian wool industry. It's primarily an online platform that allows wool growers and industry participants, particularly wool growers partners in their growing process, the wool brokers, to easily harness digital efficiencies across the wool growing, shearing and selling process. It really offers a set of digital tools to allow growers to make more informed decisions with regard to the growing and selling of their wool. So where did WoolQ come from? Well, it grew out of the wool selling system review that was instigated by AWI back in 2015. Basically, WoolQ grew out of the wool selling system review and a number of questions that AWI was keen to see answered. In the first instance, they felt that the selling process, that is getting wool from the sheep's back to the ship's rail, as they said it, to see if there were some ways in which costs could be reduced, efficiencies could be gained, there could be increased transparency in the selling process, increased competitive tension along the selling process, and that's not just increased competition in the sale room, that's increased competition for all the services that are incurred in getting wool from the shearing shed to the port, things like testing, insurance, transport, and other services that are required to get wool from the shearing shed to the port. They were also keen to see if there could be some modernisation, if you like, of that process. It still seemed to be very much the same sort of processes that were in effect, you know, up to 30 or 40 years ago. So the wool selling system review instigated in 2015 to look at ways to reduce costs and increase efficiencies, increase transparency, increase competitive tension, and look at potential innovations that could be applied to that selling process. Well, the review panel concluded after receiving more than 200 submissions from wool growers and indeed a number of face-to-face interviews with all sorts of industry participants from brokers, exporters, Chinese processors and other industry institutions, that there were significant issues that prevented the current selling system in adopting new and more efficient processes. The panel proposed an industry-focused digital information portal as a tool to promote transparency and choice in the wool industry. It would also expose wool growers directly to a broader range of market opportunities. It's possibly interesting to talk in this early stage, and I won't go into too much detail, but one of the things that AWI is very much focused on, and focused on for good reason, and that's this idea of transparency and traceability. You probably all heard, the words bandied about before, but traceability is now not just a nice to have, it's really an imperative for people producing products. More and more, the end users or consumers of products are wanting to know stories of provenance, where the goods they're buying have come from, and they want those stories verified. And so traceability has just grown and grown in terms of importance, and we've seen it in food products, but it's also very important in the fibre and fabric industry as well. But look, let's go back to WoolQ and what it is and how it works. Well, as we mentioned before, WoolQ supports the wool growing and selling cycle. How does it do this? Well, firstly, when a wool grower's planning their clip for the year, they will basically look at setting up a number of things. And where does WoolQ help here? Well, we've developed what we've called an industry network, the WoolQ Industry Network. And this is Australia's first online wool industry directory and discussion forum connecting wool growers, classers, brokers and buyers. In short, we've sort of given it a nickname of a LinkedIn for wool growers, where wool growers can basically build a profile on the platform, can start telling stories about their wool growing enterprises. It can also connect one enterprise with another to allow those online discussions. And indeed, those discussions can take place not just between wool growers themselves, sharing stories of how they're running their businesses, but also including input from brokers, wool classes, and indeed wool exporters. The next stage of the process is the shearing process. And where WoolQ can help here is that we've developed an electronic version of the paper speci, the WoolQ e-speci, that allows wool growers and their partners in shed, the classes, contractors and brokers, to capture, share and store clip data from those very first stages in the shed. Now, you may ask, well, what's wrong with the old paper speci? Nothing wrong with it, but an e-speci can help in a number of ways. Firstly, when you're collecting data in shed, it doesn't then need to be stored anywhere. It can't be lost. You've collected it on your e-device, which could be a mobile phone or tablet. Doesn't matter if you don't have Wi-Fi access in your shed. The data is stored on your mobile device until you get back into Wi-Fi range, and it will then download that information onto your WoolQ system. We've found that the e-speci has reduced a number of errors. It also allows for quicker communication. Once the classer has completed the e-speci, he can deliver it directly, digitally to the wool grower themselves, to your broker, and indeed the broker can then pass that information on to warehouses that may be storing your wool as well. And indeed, whilst it has been difficult for some people to get their head around, particularly those who aren't used to using digital devices on a daily basis, we do have a number of educational tools on the platform to allow you to get your head around how it works and how you can make it work for your enterprise. We also have a very good field officer in South Australia, in Andrew Dennis, who's assisted us going around to sheds and helping growers and their contractors get up to speed with the e-speci. After the wool's been shorn and the speci's been sent to the broker and that initial data has been collected on your WoolQ dashboard, the wool's sent off obviously for testing. Now, that test data has traditionally been sent back to growers via email, may have even been sent back via fax or even, via snail mail. What we've asked for here is for that information to be sent back to a particular grower's WoolQ dashboard so that you can start building and storing all the information that relates to a particular clip in one place. So you've got your e-speci data that's recorded, your classer data. You're then building on that with the official test data from AWTA. Well, we've got all this data. What are we going to do with it? Well, what we've built within the platform is what we've called a ready reckoner, or if you like, a wool version of the mortgage calculator. And what this does is, using the data that you've already collected, allowing you to receive an estimate for given the current price of wool on market, that you might receive for your clip using that up-to-date market price. So a virtual price, if you like, before you actually send the wool to market. The ready reckoner can also include the costs involved in getting wool to market, brokerage costs, test costs, warehousing, insurance. All those costs can be input into the ready reckoner to allow you to get a net cost that you might receive for your wool if you were to sell it at today's prices. And we've found that this has been very useful to a number of our growers who are using the system just to work out when they might get their wool to market, particularly in these volatile times. Well, we've built all these tools to help growers make better decisions. And what we found, having sort of got this far in developing the platform, that we really needed to provide more optionality for growers in actually selling their wool. Why? Because 93% of wool is currently sold via the traditional open outcry method that performs extremely well and can sell a large volume of wool in a very short period of time. But there are other options these days for trading products. And we felt that in 2020, the fact that so much wool is still traded via these old-fashioned methods was slightly strange, and that there should be more optionality, a more modern option for selling wool, a more transparent option, because if you decide to use the WoolQ Market, growers can actually be in the virtual sale room themselves, watching their wool sold on their computers within their office. And, just if I can be so bold, my background's in financial services, both in the futures exchange and stock exchange. Stock exchange went from open outcry to electronic trading back in 1989. That journey began, and the futures exchange in 1999. And it's slightly surprising to me that in 2020, still so much wool is traded via open outcry. And that's not to say, as I've already mentioned, that it's not a workable alternative, but I still believe there should be optionality. And we've only, we've seen very clearly in the last couple of months some of the shortcomings of open outcry. When you have a situation where social distancing is required, the open outcry sale room with some 50 buyers and sellers in there, it sometimes just can't work. So what the WoolQ Market is it's an interactive marketplace that enables the matching of buying and selling interests for the sale and purchase of any tested and marketable wool. It's got a two-pronged approach. It offers an online contiguous auction that will operate outside the open cry auction, and to date we've set upon Thursday at midday to operate our online auction. But it will also include what we've called a bulletin board, and this will be a bulletin board of buying and selling interest of Australian wool that's available on a 24/7 basis. The final part of the process is reviewing, okay, we've planned, we've shorn our wool, we've had it tested, we've analysed it, we've actually sold it. We've got all this data relating to a specific year's clip. But let's store it somewhere so that we can use this as an inventory of information, if you like. And this personal dashboard can show your clip and test results, current estimated market value for your wool in one place, so that you can, as years go by, make year-on-year comparisons very simply. And just to show you how all these different pieces work on the platform, I'll just take you through a number of pages. So here's the home page for WoolQ. You get on, you get a log on and you get to the home page and you're immediately confronted with, some data that relates to the market prices of wool. It also, it'll show you obviously historical data, but it also gives you some rather interesting data that relates to forward pricing. And so it includes the Ryman 19 and 21 micron forward pricing models. It also allows you to switch between the Eastern market indicators and the Western market indicators, and just basically gives you an overview of the market. I talked about my WoolQ dashboard. Basically, this is just a place where you can have a look at your season overview for a particular lot of wool, showing micron, VM, NKT, cut per head, etc. You can change a number of these attributes to your specific requirements, but as you can see, you can have those bits of information at your fingertips. Underneath the My WoolQ dashboard, you can see the WoolQ forum, and this is the LinkedIn sort of for wool growers that I mentioned, where you can post stories or ideas, information relating to your particular growing enterprise, but perhaps it may be something that relates to an association you belong to or your particular region where you're growing your wool. Further information on the forum, you can see a little bit more there, but as I mentioned, very much like LinkedIn. Clip overview that I also mentioned, where you can store all the data that relates to a particular clip, relating to clips, sale lots, mobs, etc. Basically using that data and representing it in a digital format. Year-on-year comparisons. We talked a little bit before about this whole concept of traceability. And one of the features of the WoolQ network is it allows growers, and not only growers, but primarily growers, to build rich business profiles that relate to their wool growing enterprises. It allows them to put in contact information, gives a bit of a space where you can talk a little bit about the sort of wool that you grow and your business, allows you to put in your particular logo or brand, and a bit more information about your specific wool growing enterprise. It does allow you to insert photos or videos. And whilst we recognise that a number of our growers have quite sophisticated websites, which are a great calling card, they're not easily searchable. So what we've tried to use WoolQ for is to allow growers to build profiles on the platform that can be searchable by brokers, potentially, exporters. We've opened it up now to offshore processors and retailers. And interestingly, we got a call from Marks and Spencer about a year ago, the retailer in the UK, who said, look, we'd really like to showcase the Flinders ranges in our winter collection next year. Love to have beautiful windows full of pictures of Woolpina Pound and the wonderful country there. We'd like you to put us in touch with wool growers from that area that we might be able to, build some stories, buy some wool from. And whilst, we knew that there was wool growing associations in the Flinders Ranges, there were a number of, prominent wool growers who had good websites. They weren't easily searchable. So if you like, if WoolQ can do something, but you've got your own fabulous website, use the WoolQ network as a search engine so that people can find you, get to your brand, and then click on your website. I think more and more people are going to want to, be able to reach out to growers to find out more about the sorts of enterprises that they're running. And that could have, implications for new contracts that may be achieved. This isn't about, necessarily selling wool direct to these people, but one of the things we found in the wool selling system review was that both growers and end users were wanting very much the same thing. Growers said, look, we work really hard to, produce this wonderful, high quality, high value product, but we don't really know much about what happens to it once it leaves the farm gate. Interestingly, when we went and spoke to a number of the Chinese processors and indeed Italian processors, they said the same thing. Look, we really don't know much about the people who are, growing this fabulous product, and we'd like to have, closer engagement. Maybe we can talk about, what we can do better in future years. And so in the first instance, we felt that this WoolQ network and these wool grower business profiles could help on that basis. Here's some more information. Down the bottom, you can see there's a gallery that not only can include still photos, but you can upload a video if you like. We've got a wonderful video on the WoolQ platform that I'd urge you to have a look at if you haven't already, that highlights this whole idea of provenance using the test case of Fresh Air Merino from South Australia. And it's a wonderful illustration of how you can build that profile on the platform to market yourselves to, the end users or indeed processors of fine South Australian wool. We talked about the directory that can be searched. The directory can be searched on a number of criteria, but basically the directory includes mainly wool growers, but also wool brokers, wool buyers / exporters, and classes as well. And this allows, people to search out different service providers, but also can allow, as I mentioned, some end users to find growers of specific types of wool. They can search different types of wool, as you can see down here, average clip size, quality schemes that they may be associated with. The two that particularly come to mind are Sustainawool and Authentico. They can also search by specific groups if growers want to put themselves in groups, and groups that I'm thinking of might be Australian superfine wool growers. They could be Kangaroo Island, a collection of Kangaroo Island wool growers. And so, not only can we search individuals, but we can put growers together in groups. And a number of growers we've worked with have found that very useful. I talked about the Ready Reckoner or calculator. Basically, this just allows you to, as I say, put in various parameters that relate to the wool that you've just recently shorn and had tested, and basically get a market value based on the current market price. I'm finding it a bit hard because I can't move the screen up and down, so apologies, viewers, for this, but you'll get a fair idea that this is quite a useful tool that's, allows you to use the data that you've collected digitally in a meaningful way. This is another part of the Ready Reckoner where you can see you can put in the different costs that are involved in getting your wool to market, so you can get a net return for your wool. And then finally, I mentioned WoolQ Market, which is our online trading platform. And due to some lack of interest via intermediaries last year, we had decided to put WoolQ Market on hold for a while, but the emergence of the COVID-19 crisis and the social distancing that the virus has meant to a number of businesses, we were urged to take the market out of mothballs and offer it as an alternative during these times to the open cry auction. We've had 4 major demonstrations. We've had 1 auction. We have our second auction tomorrow with a number of lots of wool from 3 different brokers. And, we've been happy with the way it works, and we've had some very suitable feedback. As I say, we're not looking to replicate or be the alternative to open cry trading, but we do think that growers deserve a number of options to sell their wool, and there's obviously the Auctions Plus wool trade platform, and indeed a number of growers do direct to mill deals as well. We just feel there should be more options for wool growers in these volatile times to get their wool to market. So as I say, we'll hold our second auction tomorrow. We've got a number of interesting lots for sale. And I think this just adds to develop the market in a way that other agricultural markets and financial markets have developed in the last 25 to 30 years. Well, I'll sort of rabbit it on a bit, and I know it's sort of late for you guys who are working very hard during the day. But look, we'd really love you to register for WoolQ if you haven't already. And by registering, that means you get a log on and can basically start building your business profile. I urge you to watch some of the videos. We've got 3 videos that relate to the e-speci, a number of general videos that go through some of the stuff that I've been talking about tonight. We've got the fresh air video that talks about, building profiles and how that helps in, delivering, a provenance story for your product. But, really what we're about is, putting some tools, digital tools in the hands of wool growers to allow them to be better connected, have quick access to greater amounts of information, allow them to make, better, more informed decisions, and provides them with a form of business continuity. When I was working in the banking sector, we were always, asked to develop business continuity plans. If things go wrong, what's the backup? What are you going to do to make sure the business continues if you can't operate out of your building? And, I think we've found this, with this current crisis, a number of things have had to change. And I think that WoolQ provides a bit of that business continuity planning for a number of market participants in the wool industry. It also offers this, some small part of this concept of traceability and provenance, allowing growers to build rich stories online that can be easily searched by end users of Australian wool. And, just so, I know a number of people have found some of the tools slightly tricky to adopt in the first instance. But as I say, we have a number of field officers, but none better, and in fact, quite honestly, none better than Andrew Dennis, who operates for us in South Australia. And he's particularly, helpful in getting our wool grower clients up to speed with the e-speci. So please, make contact with any one of us. I'd love to talk to you. Another myth that's out there about WoolQ is that it's a tool of disintermediation and trying to cut out your broker. Nothing could be further from the truth. The broker is critical in I think, our adoption of new growers to the platform. And our market, our WoolQ Market, can only be accessed from a trading perspective by brokers. You know, in the first instance, brokers have to offer the wool for sale, as they do in the open cry market. So it's not open slather. The broker is, you know, an integral part of the whole WoolQ process. It's been, you know, great to be able to speak to you, and, you know, I hope to hear some interesting questions, but also, you know, we'll be available to talk to any of you in the future should you need to. Numbers are there, and certainly you can find contact details on the WoolQ platform, www.woolq.com. Thank you very much for listening in. Back to you, Ian.
Thanks, Will. We've got a few questions come in, so I'll just run through these now. So what's been the level of adoption by producers of WoolQ?
Look, we've got now some 2,650 growers who have registered for WoolQ, and about 750 have built profiles on the platform. They've become part of a network and built a profile for their, you know, wool growing enterprise on the platform. In terms of the e-speci, it's fair to say we've done a large amount of volume, but for a smaller number of growers. So the e-speci has been adopted in the first instance by larger growers, it's fair to say, but you know, in the last few months we've seen more and more adoption of the e-speci by some of the smaller growers as well, which is good to see.
Okay, thank you, Will. So another one is WoolQ compatible with other farm software, for example, AgriWeb, and does it allow sort of transfer of data at all?
Very good question. Look, particularly when we were developing the e-speci, we were to use the e-speci well requires a form of sort of setup where grower, broker, and classer all collaborate in the shearing process. But there's a lot of work that can be done pre-shearing, like setting up the mobs for shearing. And a number of our growers said, listen, we've got all that data, you know, in our AgriWeb software. We don't want to have to re-enter it in WoolQ. And we do have a way now, a compatibility where, you know, you can download certainly AgriWeb mob information into the WoolQ database. But we're looking to do more. But it's all, you know, because it's been developed by you know, wool growers themselves. You know, we're not the smartest guys in the room. We're not going to do everything. But what we want is for wool growers to have something on their desk that can be added to with all different software providers that they want to use. So all we want is to put a screen on someone's desk that can connect to any other bit of software that growers wish to use. And, you know, we understand they don't want, you know, their hard-earned spent on products that they've already purchased. But so we're trying very hard to make sure that everything that we do with WoolQ is open. That means it can connect with any other software providers that are available to Australian wool growers.
Thank you, Will.
Yes to AgriWeb, but you know, if there are other software providers that growers want, we'll certainly look to make sure we can connect.
Great. Next one was, how does WoolQ differ from other products? For example, WoolClip.
The WoolQ e-speci is the comparable product to WoolClip. Look, we had promised that WoolQ would act as a database for wool growers' clip data. And when we started building it, there wasn't an electronic speci available. And we realized that growers or their partners wouldn't want to be transposing, you know, what they'd written down in their paper speci into WoolQ. So we decided that that information had to be collected at source in the shed. So we developed the first mobile enabled, so enabled by an app on your mobile phone or your tablet. And the reason it had to be an app was because many growers didn't have connectivity in their sheds. Since then, WoolClip's been developed, and I think they have an app now. I'm not 100% sure, but certainly the difference in the first place was ours was it had the ability to be used outside Wi-Fi range.
Okay, thank you. And
but certainly the WoolClip data, if your clients or wool growers are using WoolClip, the AWEX e-speci, that data can be collected on WoolQ as well.
okay, thank you, Will. Just one final question. What happens if your broker's not on the list? I guess that relates to the market.
Yeah, look, if they're not, then I'd, as a grower, I'd urge them to get on the list. You know, I've been involved in this process from the very beginning. You know, I was a member of the Wool Selling System Review, and you know, from the very early stages, you know, brokers had reservations, and they're quite understandable. But since then, when brokers have been part of the development process, we had 3 of the larger brokers involved in what we call the Wool Exchange Portal Working Group, which was to develop what sort of services would WoolQ deliver. And look, I think it was fair to say, you know, they understood that there were benefits not only for their growers, but also for themselves to, you know, to be able to work closely with their growers digitally rather than getting in the car and going to their growers' farms. And indeed acting in true partnership with brokers in terms of the delivery of services. And, you know, the broker is an integral part of the e-speci. Obviously, the e-speci is collected in shed by the classer. It's then sent to the grower and the broker electronically. The broker then, you know, has much more efficient processes. As I mentioned, the WoolQ Market, the online market, is still only accessible by brokers on behalf of their clients. So, you know, we see there are opportunities for brokers here. So if you know, if growers see that their brokers aren't connected, then, you know, I'd urge them to say, you know, look, get on board. And certainly WoolQ has a number of functions in there for brokers that, you know, allow them to showcase their services, such as the network, but also, you know, many of the brokers we've worked with have praised the e-speci as a tool that they've liked. And you know, I mentioned we've got an online auction that we're conducting tomorrow at midday. We've got 3 brokers. I'm happy to mention them: Elders, Fox and Lily Rural, and McDonald and Co. are selling wool on the WoolQ Market tomorrow. So, you know, if their brokers have some concerns, then, you know, I'd be happy for them to be put them in touch with me. But I think the growers should certainly urge their brokers to get on board, and they've got nothing to fear from WoolQ.
Great, thanks, Will. No more questions at this stage, so I think we'll call it a close. So just like to thank everyone who joined us for today's webinar. Just got a poll there as well for attendees just to complete, please. Just like to thank you, Will, for your insight into WoolQ and sharing all your expertise. If attendees have got any additional questions, they can contact us directly through the webinar registration. And just like to thank everybody for their time, and have a wonderful evening.
Thank you very much, Ian.